Hey guys, welcome back to the Criterion Collection review series where we're going through my personal Criterion collection as I rewatch them or watch some of them for the first time and give my new updated takes on them. And today we're going to be looking at a film that I was very excited to rewatch, not only because it's been a while, but because I remember feeling a little cold and distant from it when I first saw it, and I was excited to give it another chance, and I'll spoil it a little bit. I'm happy that I did give another chance, and that is Abbas Kiarostami's Close Up, which is number 519 in the collection. I'd like to apologize in advance if I pronounce any of these names correctly, especially Kiarostami's. I am horrible with pronunciation, and I've tried to look it up, and I think something just evades me. Kiarostami is an Iranian filmmaker that is well beloved the world over. He gained a lot of prominence in the 90s and sort of became an international sensation. And one of the films that helped him reach that status was this one here, Close Up. And part of the reason it was so successful and part of the reason it was so loved was just how radical and different it is, and it's a film that people keep coming back to and finding new things to love about it and new ways to read it. To get into what Close Up is, it is a sort of maybe documentary. It is a film about a real life event where this person whose name is Sabzian, he convinced this family that he was a famous Iranian filmmaker who actually is a real person and was very popular at the time. And so he sort of a little bit takes advantage of the family and sort of convinces them to let him stay with them, to borrow some money, all because he's going to use their home as a set for his new film. But then the family starts to suspect that he may not be who he says he is. They call the police and the proper authorities. A journalist comes by to help document the event as Sabzian is arrested and taken to prison. Soon after that event happened, Kiarostami found out about the story and decided he wanted to make a film about it. And so he then follows Sabzian from prison to the court case and thereafter. The film is just sort of a character study of him, showing the court case, showing him in prison, giving him a chance to sort of tell his part of the story, while also showing reenactments of events in the story. So when Sabzian first meets the family, the day that he is arrested, things like that. The reason I say it's a sort of documentary is not just because of the reenactments, but because after further research, which this release really helped to put in perspective, most of the film is fabricated. It is based on real events, and the people featured in the film are the actual people involved in what happened. But everything is sort of fabricated and enhanced by Kiarostami, not just him as a director, but by the presence of his camera. One of the more, I don't know if scandalous is the right word, but just one of the more prevalent examples is the courtroom, where he's able to convince the court to allow him to film the case. And he sort of works with the judge in a weird way to help question Sabzian, and is constantly asking questions, getting more out of him to further explain why he did this thing and why he impersonated somebody and, you know, possibly took money from the family. And then there's the reenactments, of course, which does use the real people involved in those actual events who are dramatizing what happened to them. And so it begs the question, of course, what is real in this film and what isn't? While I won't spoil that question because that's kind of the fun of the film, is sort of figuring out where the lines blur. Because going in, being told it's a documentary, for me at least, it was difficult sometimes, especially my first viewing, to figure out what was real and what wasn't. What was filmed without any, interference from Kiarostami, what is not reenactment, because these people are so good at playing themselves, right, and of conveying what actually happened and how they felt in those moments. But I think that medium, that way of telling the story as like a half documentary, half, fiction, sort of speaks to the point of the film. And Close Up is about a lot of things, and I think the main thing to get out of it, the main theme, the main idea, is the effect cinema has on people, especially people who are underrepresented in film. Sabzian a lot of the time speaks about his own personal life and how film has affected it, where he is of the lower class, he has a child, he's divorced, he's unemployed most of the time, and you know, he always felt film never fully represented him. He may have enjoyed it, but there was never anything for him there. But then the director that he is impersonating made a film called The Cyclist that he felt finally showed what finally showed someone like him, finally conveyed his problems, his issues, his ills on screen and made it important. You know, where the middle class and the higher class people and the politicians seemingly are not listening to him, where he's not getting anywhere in life and feels sort of lost. These films are, or at least the specific film, is giving his life importance, is showing that it is worth discussing and worth talking about and portraying on a film. And he's really inspired by that. He's inspired by, you know, the magic of cinema and its ability to give importance to things. And he also speaks to the, you know, the power of performing as a director and how much control he has. And I think that's a big part of it, is how being that director and performing that role can take him out of his class, right? Where he feels unable to control his life and just sort of wandering through his lower middle class, his lower class. Being a director gives him control, where he not only has control over people and actors and a story, but he has control over his life. You know, a director controls where a film goes, the production, what people see, how they perceive things, and he's able to do that by impersonating this director, by believing that, by convincing himself he's like that. He is able to bring the power of cinema into reality. And Kiarostami's film takes that another step further by showing how powerful film is by blurring the lines of documentary and fiction, by portraying something that may have been made up, that may not be true, but using the real life people and the real life events as the basis to further convince the audience of what's happening and allow us to sympathize with Sabzian and with the family and with everyone involved. One aspect of the film that I find really fascinating is that the reenactments they have are very mundane, I guess. The first reenactment we see is the opening scene, which is the journalists and the police going to the family's house to arrest Sabzian. And we'd have a long taxi drive over to the house, and rather than following the police and the journalist into the house to see the action, we are left with the taxi driver as he just sort of mills about in front of the house. And it's a very quiet moment that has some striking imagery. And I think that sort of speaks to the point of the film, again, about cinema giving importance to things that are not considered important, of giving things that seem innocuous. It makes them seem important because someone chose those things to be there. They decided those things should be there, so you find meaning and you connect it. Which, going through the special features, that seemed to be Kiarostami's point, especially with his general filmmaking ideas, which is he finds something interesting that he may not fully realize himself, but it's something he wants to put in his film, it's something he wants to show, and then, you know, half of the work is done by the audience, who brings in their own experiences, their own readings, to make a full piece of art, a full film. That is what makes Close Up such an engaging film, and a film that lasts so long, is, you know, half of the movie is Kiarostami showing you this story, some of which has been constructed for you, but then also it's him allowing you, giving you the room to, you know, figure out what it means, what the film is saying, what the point is, you know, letting Sabzian go on and on about the importance of art and what it means, allowing us time to sit with the family and figure out their own hardships as a middle-class family and what they're dealing with, and, you know, why they love film, and just giving us a lot of time. You know, it's an hour-and-a-half film, but none of it's wasted, and it gives you a lot to work with and chew on and discuss, especially with the medium of the film and the unique way that it is produced. In general, it feels almost like a upgrade or like an evolution of F for Fake, which was a film that was mostly documentary and then put together by Orson Welles. Well, what if you take a film that is a fictionalized version of something that could be a documentary? It reminds me a lot of Truman Capote's In Cold Blood, where you have someone who's very close to the material and very close to the subject of the material, and then crafting a narrative around that and trying to tell the audience something that may not always be accurate to what's happening, but does a great job of exploring what that person is about and what they look for in art and in life. Well, the other issues that make Close Up kind of a difficult film to talk about in a one-sided conversation like this, because I don't want to give anything away, especially the final moments of the film, because seeing it is, part of the experience. Part of the experience is just figuring the movie out for yourself and how you feel about it. And that makes it an endlessly engaging film, and one that I really, really do recommend. This is still the only Kiarostami film I have seen, but I'm very excited to watch his other films, like Certified Copy, Taste of Cherry, I believe it's called, just these classic films of his that gained a lot of notoriety because of the goodwill he had built up from making Close Up, which I think is a fantastic movie and well worth watching, and is an experiment that mostly works. But one thing I love about this release from Criterion is that if you are engaged by the film but don't necessarily have a full understanding of it or want to dive deeper into it, they give you so many great special features to work with. There are two, I believe it's two, yeah, there are two interviews with Kiarostami. There's one recorded by Criterion of him reflecting back on the film that gave me a lot of insight into what he wanted to make the film and sort of the effects it had on him afterwards. A walk with Kiarostami, which is sort of just a general documentary about Kiarostami in a very laid-back fashion of just getting his ideas on filmmaking and his, his ethics and things like that. It's very fascinating. There's a documentary called Close Up Long Shot, which is a documentary about Sabzian that was made after Close Up, a few years afterwards. And while I haven't had a chance to watch it, a lot of people really highly praise it and say it is a good, almost like companion piece to Close Up, of giving you a better idea of who Sabzian is and how this film affected his own view of life and his connection to cinema. You also have Kiarostami's first feature film, The Traveler, which Sabzian mentions was an inspiration for him in the film. So that's really great. You have an audio commentary, and then you also get this booklet here, which was another really great piece of information, a really great way of finding out more about the film, giving a lot of historical context, breaking down certain parts of the film, really going in depth with it. It's a really great read, written by Godfrey Cheshire. It's nothing too long or too expansive, but I think it is a great companion to the film. These special features in general do a great job of sort of like continuing the conversation, right? Where if you want to learn more about the film, about Kiarostami and how this film fits into his life and his career, this release does exactly that, and it does what a lot of great Criterion releases do, especially for experimental art films and films that do challenge narratives and filmmaking. It continues the conversation. It gives you a lot to chew on, different perspectives on it, different ways of looking at it, but without giving you the answers. And I think that's what's so great about this release from Criterion and about this film, is that there's so much to chew on and so much to work with, but there's no definitive answer. There's no right way to look at it. You watch it and you get what you want out of it, and therefore it becomes a more personal and impactful film, and overall proves Kiarostami's point about the magic of cinema and how it affects people and what it does for them. But either way, thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, please leave a like. What do you think about Close Up? What do you think about Kiarostami? Please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear you sound off about that. If you want more people to see this video, please share it around. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe, where next time we're going to be talking about one of my favorite bizarro horror films, which is the Japanese film Hausu, or more commonly known as House. But either way, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.